Back to 755 is real. I'm David O'Brien, Braves writer for The Athletic. I'm with my co-host Eric O'Flaherty, former Braves reliever. What's happening out in Washington State, Eric?
It's hot. It's hot out here. 100 degrees today.
Explain to people you're not in Seattle because when you
Not in
hear 100
Seattle anymore.
degrees,
I'm on the other side of the state. It's a lot different
on the other
climate.
side of the mountain range, right? It's different
Yeah.
climate.
Yeah.
Kind of like in Colorado, if you're on either side of the front range or on the
Yeah.
what's that? Steamboat is a different climate than the ski resorts like in Breckenridge and
Yeah.
Copper Mountain and Vale. Because they have different type of champagne powder in Steamboat, they call it. It's nice.
Yeah.
It's real.
Yeah. It's just definitely different out here.
Yeah, so you got dry
Dry
heat where you are
Yeah.
now, huh?
Yeah.
Totally different than Seattle.
Seattle gets up to 70 degrees and people are in shorts and have their shirts off.
Yeah.
It doesn't get like this, but I like it. We've been outside a lot more. Our kids are getting firmer.
That's like in college, man. And at University of Kansas, in the winter, it would be, 0, 10 degrees some days. You walk into class freezing your ass off. And then when spring comes around, like the first day where it feels like spring, it's like 50,
53.
sunny as hell. It feels beautiful. But people are in shorts, tank tops, flip flops. It's like it's 50.
Yeah. That's pretty much how Seattle is for the most part till about July. But over here it's hot, man. It's been 100 for a few days already.
Yeah, we're having unbelievably nice weather in Atlanta. I mean, I this time of the year, usually it's, as you know, having played here, usually it's up in the 90s now, starting to get humid, and it's felt like more like San Diego the last few days.
That's awesome. That's good for the boys.
80 and dry and sunny right now. Perfect. So anyway, from that nicety, let's get to the grim weekend occurrence that everyone was talking about with the Braves. There's no way to avoid it. So Marcell Ozuna. The Braves, I think, have been fortunate enough to, for the most part, avoid any of these kind of ugly incidents, at least since Hector Oliveira. People have forgotten about Hector Oliveira because he was such a bad player to begin with. He hadn't really established himself when he was arrested for domestic violence with a woman who was not his wife in his hotel room in D.C. But he never played another inning of baseball in the major leagues. Again, he was not a very good player. He was a bad player. It was a terrible trade. They got rid of Alex Wood to get Hector Oliveira, by the way. But Hector Oliveira, the Braves could not just dump him and get the money back and not have to pay him. Once he came off this suspended list, during the suspension, actually, they traded him and took on Matt Kemp's terrible contract. So they swapped one really bad deal and one unpleasantness because they couldn't bring him back to their organization and their fan base and all that after what he was arrested for. And they didn't want to. He was a bad player. But they took on Matt Kemp's contract in order to get rid of him. And that's my long way of getting around to, as bad and as ugly as this Marcell Ozuna situation is, it's not a given. In fact, the precedent says the Braves will not be able to just release him and not have to pay his contract. Because it is a very complicated situation, as you know, with the union contracts, with the standard contract and getting out of it. Even though it has a line in there about how players have to be upstanding and all that, it's not enforceable. And really the only way that they can get out of this, from my understanding, is if he goes to prison, goes to jail, because then he's unavailable to play. And if you're unavailable to play, they can get out of the contract. Yes. But other than that, very difficult to get out of a contract, to get out of guaranteed money.
And it shouldn't be. Yeah, I mean, it should be in the sense that, if I think we talked about this earlier, if there's no way to prove it or you're taking somebody's word. I mean, like in this case, there's witnesses. Mm-hmm. I just know, police officers that witnessed it, but, I just know that there's not a single player that would have a problem with it. When you're in those meetings, if he got dumped, when you're in those meetings and domestic violence comes up, that there's no discussion. It's like every single guy agrees you don't do that. And I know that different occurrences in the past, players have said, screw that guy. He should lose his deal. So it's not, I don't think people should read into it as the players want a guy to get paid that does this or want him to get his money. But there's some kind of, there's a reason why the union does what they do. I just don't understand it.
Yeah, so this is one of those instances where, and there are others, where the union has policies and enforces things, and I think they do it for the obviously they do it for, in their view, the greater good, the bigger picture. When in those cases, those instances of domestic violence, like you said, 99.9% of the players would be like, get rid of him
Yep.
because they're not supporting this and they're
Well,
not saying,
yeah, that makes it hard on the team too. The players
Yeah.
don't want you back, so that makes the team's position. You can't just throw a guy like that back in the clubhouse,
right.
because you got to answer to your teammates after that, and they don't want to put on a uniform and take the field with a guy that does something like that either. So it's the Braves are going to basically just have to eat it, if you ask me.
And they will not. I don't think that they are in a position to eat it because he's half a season into a $65 million contract, 4-year deal that was backloaded. He's only making $12 million this year.
Yeah.
So in other words, the season's a third old. He would have made like $4 million so far this year. They're not going to eat $60 million. They won't do it.
But they're not going to let him take the field for him either, are they?
Right. They're not going to. I can't see it. I'd be shocked if he played again for the Braves.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to be everybody, the average fan, and I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying everybody wants these to be simpler cases than they are. They never are. They want the Braves to come out and say he will never play for us again. They can't say that for legal reasons. When they fight this, they got to always be thinking in mind of, if this comes down to a lawsuit later and he's trying to collect his money or whatever, he can point to them saying this or that on this day. They'd already made up their mind. You know what I mean? So what they do and what they're told to do by the MLB is to defer all these comments to the commissioner's office at this point. And the commissioner's not going to say anything at this point, other than they'll say when the investigation is ongoing, because it is, from my understanding, they've started it. So until they complete their investigation, I don't think you're going to hear anything from the Braves. They're just going to say, while the investigation is going, we're not going to comment. But I think ultimately, and Ken wrote about this, Ken Rosenthal wrote a really good story in The Athletic covering all the cases before. There's been 13 cases of domestic violence since this policy went into effect 6 years ago. Not one of these teams, not one, has tried to terminate the contract because they know how difficult it would be to do it and almost impossible not to pay the money that they owe the guy. They've been able to not pay part of it. They don't pay while the guy's suspended, because those are suspensions without pay from domestic violence.
Yeah.
So once MLB concludes its investigation and hands down a suspension, he will not be getting paid. And they don't get paid, I guess, what administrative leave, but he won't get paid during a suspension. And what I think is going to happen is he'll be on the restricted list, so he won't count against their roster. Then he'll get suspended, and I think a minimum would be half a season, but I think he'll get suspended for a year. I think he'll get.
Dyson got 162.
I think he'll get the longest suspension for this.
Yeah,
that's just my initial thought. Unless something comes out, and I don't know how it would, especially if we get body cam footage. If they had the body cams on, the two cops say they walked in and saw him, because they responded to a domestic violence. Here's what happened, in case people, I don't know how you wouldn't have heard about this by now, but maybe people did. The cops were responding to a domestic violence call in Sandy Springs, Georgia, which is just right outside. It's right by the ballpark. It's 10 minutes from the ballpark, just outside the perimeter in Atlanta, suburban Atlanta. They responded to a domestic violence call. They go in. The front door was open, so they didn't even have to knock, kick in the door, whatever. They walk in. And this is ongoing. And they say in the incident report, the press release of the report, I haven't seen the actual report yet, but the report is even worse, from what my understanding. They walk in and see him, the end of this actual attack.
Yeah.
There must have been some serious rage going on, because to not see the cops walk in and stop immediately what you're doing. But they say they saw him grab her by the neck, his wife Genesis, throw her against the wall, and use his cast. He also allegedly uses cast, covering the broken fingers, which is the reason he's home anyway while the team's in New York. Used his cast to smash her face against the wall, to pin her face against the wall. So it's very ugly, man. I mean, it's hideous. And to do this with police as witnesses, I think changes the whole dynamic of this in that
The
all these
witness
other
factor.
cases,
Yeah, it's
all
hearsay.
these other
It's me
cases,
versus my word versus yours in most of them. This one is not.
and a couple of those you had it like one occurred at a team function and there were witnesses, other people saw it, but
Yeah.
you never had police officers testifying. And in most of these cases, the woman ultimately, the person, the victim, ultimately decides not to press charges or doesn't cooperate, and that makes it difficult or impossible for them to press charges.
Right.
Well, that's out the door with this, because uh, the Georgia Family Violence Act states that once there, if there is reason, evidence to press forward with the case, they don't even need cooperation of the victim. And in this
No,
case,
it's a good thing.
police to witnessed it. So I cannot see any circumstances where where these charges are dropped at all. And one of them is a felony charge. That also differentiates this from
Yeah.
the other cases. This is a felony because strangulation, assault by strangulation is a felony in Georgia. And that's that's one of the charges, two charges. The other is battery, family violence. So these are really ugly charges, really serious. And it's there may be some teams. The Yankees have taken some guys who have been domestic violence, like Aroldis Chapman, have taken them and given them contracts, re-signed them. There's a few other teams that have re-signed guys or kept guys that they owed money to, like the Astros, rather than just eat the money. If the guy was still a contributor, they sucked it up. And this is a market, as you know. I don't think this is a town where
No chance.
the audience
No chance.
There's too much of the audience that'll be totally turned off by that, the statement that it makes to them. I can't see him being embraced or even accepted on this team again after what he did. And that's from a guy that they loved a year ago, who led the league in homers and RBIs. And they loved all the antics and all the stuff he did, the fun stuff he did. But that all changes. It all changed in one night. And once this report went out of what he did, I think that changes everything in the Atlanta market for a vast majority of their fans, or enough of their fans, that and this team stresses the whole family values thing as much as you could possibly stress it. I think his future's over with this team. It's just a matter of how they cut the ties, because as this thing grinds through, it's not going to be fast, because it's going to grind through the judicial system and the MLB investigation. So fans are going to get frustrated and ask, why is he still on the team? Why hasn't he been released? Because
there's a process to it, but I can't see him ever putting on a Braves uniform again. I mean, it's just from the get-go, I was like, that's going to be it. And especially, you're right, the fan base, I don't think this fan base, I mean, there's some fan bases that if you're hitting 800 with 40 homers in June, it's like, well, they might let it slide, but I can't see this fan base accepting that under any circumstance.
And like I said, it's almost impossible to avoid these contracts. None of the other teams, there's 13 cases of this so far. Not any of those teams have even tried to avoid the contracts because they know they wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
This could be different, and that it's a felony, and that there were police witnesses. Maybe this is different. We'll see. But it's guaranteed money. And unless he can, and obviously the thing that changes it all is if he has to go to prison.
Well, if you go to jail and you have a suspension, that could.
If he goes to jail, they can get out of it, because
the whole thing, or just the jail time.
Well, he can't perform his duties while he's in jail.
Right.
So now,
but that doesn't void the contract. I don't think it's
no. But if he goes to prison, I'm not talking about 10 days in jail like Hector Oliveira served. If he has to go to prison, because this thing carries years in jail, prison sentence.
Yeah.
But since he doesn't have anything on his record. He was involved in a brawl in St. Louis.
Yeah.
But there weren't charges, were dropped. He had an altercation with his wife a year ago where she was charged with throwing a soap dish at him, cutting his face, that he drove himself to the police in Miami and reported those charges. A volatile relationship, obviously, as his attorney said yesterday, and the bail on is toxic, and they're going through a divorce now. His attorney said. So we'll see. But no, getting back to your point, if he he went to Delray for 3 days while they're waiting for the bail thing, that doesn't, or if he has to go 10 days away, No, that wouldn't void it. But if he has a prison sentence, yeah, he obviously, I think that would void the
Well, yeah,
contract. I don't think he could say once I get out a year from now, I'll still have 3 years left of my deal. I mean, that'd be uncharted waters, obviously, because
yeah,
none of these other guys
it
have
hasn't
prison
happened.
sentences. Yeah, but but with nothing on his record, it also wouldn't
Probably not
shock me,
getting jail time.
even though he's been charged with a felony, I could see him pleading down, taking
Yeah,
a huge fine, uh, still severe charges, but maybe not a felony. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just speaking. We've seen this so many times. It seems like anything can be pled down if you have a good enough attorney, you
yeah,
spend enough money.
yeah.
I think the police witnessing it changes things, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't want to say something that ends up I look like a fool. I just don't know. I don't have legalese on this, and and in a lot of ways, this is a different case than some of these others. So,
I had an incident when I was with the Mariners my second year, where a dude had gotten real physical with his wife and bit her face and hurt her pretty bad. And I remember when he tried to come back, and yeah, he bit through her lip and punched her. And
uh,
the guys that were in the rooms next to it said it sounded like a murder scene when they were fighting. But we had, when he came back, when all his shit was settled, he came back to try to apologize to the team. The dudes just told him, get out. Like, you're done, man. Don't we
team
and
leaders.
The team leaders, Richie Sexton, Jared Washburn, JJ Putz, they gave him shit. I mean, they got up on him and told him what a piece of shit he was, and then they went and talked to the front office and said, we don't want him on the field with us. And that, I would assume, I'm sure those guys love Ozuna, man, up to this point. But when that happens, I would assume that your team leaders are going to say, we're not taking the field with that guy. If all the details are correct and everything plays out the way it looks like, and it all looks terrible, I could see those guys just saying, like, look, we're not taking the field with a guy that does that. And that's probably, even if, you were a different organization that would tolerate it or try to find a way to get your value out of your money, that's going to be the biggest obstacle, is telling the other 24 guys on the team that they got to play with this guy, like what Houston was going through when they got Ozuna after his whole thing.
The other Ozuna.
Roberto Ozuna. Yeah. And,
the Braves are not that organization either. I think the Braves will be, we can't put a guy on the field when they're all about families and getting kids in the games. They move to the suburbs to be near their audience, which is in the suburban family audience and all that. It just goes against everything they're trying to, this whole culture they're trying to, that they're aiming at, to bring a guy back who did what he did. And everybody's read the report now. Everybody knows what he's allegedly did. Now, if we get body cam footage of this, they haven't said yet whether there's going to be body cam footage, but I can only assume there was, that the cops had, if there is footage of him doing this.
Yeah.
Anyway, it goes without saying, this is some terrible shit, man. And you can't do this. You cannot do this
under any circumstance.
And
my wife knows how to push my buttons like nobody. I mean, she can get me so freaking angry, and I just leave the house. You just walk away, and she'll call me a coward and a bitch when I'm walking out the door.
Yeah.
I mean, she knows if my wife wants a fight, she knows how to get it. And I get angrier. I get more angry at her than I've ever been in my life at anything. Nobody can make me as mad as my wife, but I've never come close to doing anything like that under any circumstance. And I could sit here and say it with confidence that I'll never do that. It's just something you don't do.
Yeah. There's no qualifications. There's no mitigating circumstances that make it okay for a man to hit a woman. There's
nothing.
Not, period.
You don't do it.
I know they're going to say but she was arrested a year ago for throwing a soap dish at him and cutting his face.
I don't care.
So it's a toxic relationship, obviously, and it should have ended a long time ago. They have kids. That's probably what kept them together. They have 3 little kids. That's what I feel terrible for the family, for the kids, man. For the kids to be subjected to this, it's going to be so hard. But I don't care what she did. If she did anything in this instance, I don't care if one cheated on the other, whoever that was. You end it, you get away, you stop the relationship, you get a divorce. You can yell at each other, whatever. You cannot hit a woman.
Nope. under any circumstance. You just don't do it. And
And I look differently at any guy that can do that.
yep, you're a coward. It's just not something you do. I mean, I've had to subdue I've had to pin her and hold her, when she's going crazy, and we get some ugly
kill you.
when she's, yeah. And like I said, she knows when I'm starting
It's
to
a
heat
loving
up.
pin, though.
Yeah, no, I just hold her and
An
just like,
embrace.
we just wait this out, I mean,
Yeah.
like a little 6-year-old, and you're gonna calm down. But and that's my thought too, is he's 6'1", 250.
Yeah.
You can you don't have to strangle somebody or hit him with a cast or whatever the reports are saying he did. I mean, you can
Yeah,
control you can control your wife, or you can leave. There's so many other options, not going that route, and it's just not acceptable. It's not an option. There's a million other options. That's not one of them under any circumstance.
He's going to get the book thrown at him, or he should, and we'll see. And if he did what he did, he should. And I know, we can't, there's going to be people say you can't just take the cop's word for it. But listen, this is different than some of the cases that we've seen. I think that they responded to a domestic violence call,
Yeah.
And if somebody's going to say that they maybe fabricated any of this, why would they do that? And then the woman's just going to come out and say he did not do that. Both sides are going to come out. So come on, think about that before you just lump this in with all the cases that we've seen where there is righteous indignation. That I don't think this falls under that, but we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. He obviously, it's ugly, man. This is something you don't ever want to have to deal with if you're a team, but it's part of society still, and you have to come down hard on this. And I don't think you can have any kind of acceptance for how good a player is, whether he's good, whether he's a good player, whether he's a great player like he was a year ago, or whether he's struggling like he is this year. It shouldn't affect how this is treated, and I don't think it will.
It won't. It won't.
Yeah. That shouldn't affect what the fans view him either. How the fans view him. If he was the guy leading the league in homers and RBIs like he was a year ago, I would hope there'd still be the same righteous indignation or anger by everybody, and almost unanimous view of this by the fan base and others and all that.
It'll be unanimous in the clubhouse. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, well, they came back. This happened. The timing is obviously going to be bad anytime something like this happens, but it happens the same week. He's on a road trip and he breaks his fingers sliding in Boston, sent home. That's why he's at home to begin with. This happens on Saturday. They got rained out in New York Friday. This happened Saturday as the team's getting blown out on the field. Ian Henderson's having a rare bad start. So they get blown out. This breaks during the game. I mean, it was a dark, dark night for Braves and Braves fans. Sunday, they get rained out again. Then they come home. So they went on the road trip. They were gone for a week because they went to Boston. They had off days before and after the 2-game series in Boston. So they were on the road for 7 days and played 3 games, lost 2 of them. It was a bad week.
Yeah.
So then you come home and you start a homestand. 4 games against the Nationals, followed by 3 against the Dodgers. I don't want to say must win, but Monday Memorial Day game was as close to a must win as you're going to get for a game 2 months into the season. The Braves needed to play well, needed to win that game, and they did. They played a real good game. Just an average, decent start by Charlie Morton, but they came out and scored 3 runs in the first inning, and they've been the best first inning team in the league by far this year. By the way, they lead the league in runs in the first inning for whatever reason. Yeah, they've scored 14 more runs, 13 more runs in the first inning than they scored any other inning. But they came out, jumped out to a 3-0 lead, added a run second inning when Acuna hits his 16th home run, tied for the major league lead. So they gave Charlie a 4-0 lead. He blew 3. He gave up 3 runs and won it in the 4th inning. He had one of those bad innings that he's had this year. He actually had struggled in the 4th and 5th innings, but got out of the 5th without any damage. They still led 4-3. And the bullpen pitched its ass off yesterday. Luke Jackson, man, it's time for people to give this guy credit. He's having a hell of a year.
Not happening.
He's having a hell of a year. And even though, once again, he gives up a leadoff single and there's an error on the play, the guy goes to second base with no outs he gets out of it with he protects that lead. Luke's been he's been their steadiest reliever this year.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
So, but the bullpen pitched great yesterday. Hung on to that lead. They added another run. They win 5-3. They had a must-win situation and they won. They've beat the Nationals 6 out of 7 games this year, man. How that whole rivalry right there has completely changed hands the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Remember when they couldn't win a game up in Washington, like when that ballpark first opened? After the first year up there, they had a period where they lost like 15 in a row or something like that, like over 3 years. They couldn't win a game there. Now they won 5 out of 6 up there in the first 2 series this year. This is the first time they played them here this year in Atlanta. So they've won 6 out of 7 against them. They got 3 more in this series. They need to either sweep the series or win 3 out of 4 because they got the mighty Dodgers coming in after that. And the Dodgers are playing a lot better now after going through their little.
Yeah, Betts is starting to hit. Bellinger's back.
Yeah.
I view the Braves the same way though. And I know we've been saying it for months, it seems like, but when you're watching the Dodgers do what they were doing early in the year when they kind of got into a funk, it'll level out. And I mean, the hard part for the Braves is the hits keep coming and then this thing happens this weekend. But I look at the Braves the same way. Like once they hit their stride, they're going to be the Braves again. And it seems like the Dodgers are at that point right now.
Yeah. The Dodgers obviously have more depth, more talent because of the bigger payroll, but the Braves can go, you can line up the stars on each team and the Braves can go with anybody.
Yep.
And if the Braves, the bullpen's not nearly as deep as it was last year, we've gone over that many times, but if their key guys pitch well, Shane Green, he had some back tightness in it before his last rehab appearance, which would have been his third at AAA. So they pushed that back till tonight. They don't play on Mondays. They have off days on AAA on Monday because they're playing a 6-game series in AAA.
Yeah.
So he'll have his appearance tonight. I would think if it goes well, maybe the back tightness makes it, maybe they have one more after that, but he's about to join them. And that adds a whole new dimension, I think, with them because you got Chris Martin is pitching great.
Yeah.
Man, yesterday, Will Smith had the slider going again yesterday. When Chris Martin and Will Smith are both pitching well and they're healthy, that is nasty right there, man.
And Jackson and Minner, when Minner's fresh, I think Minner just got a little.
And Matzik was fresh.
And Matzik. Yeah. It's not all of a sudden, you get Shane Green and you're looking at this pen and it's 6 deep again.
Yeah.
It's
comparable to almost any pen. Almost.
You get Newt going. This bullpen's not far off from being the dominant force it was last year. I think, Minner got a little worn down and was getting used more than he's used to. Jackson's been just steady Eddie, just sneaky.
Yeah.
No one wants to give Luke credit, but he's been throwing the shit out of the ball. Will Smith, I know he blew a couple saves, but he's been pretty damn good lately too. And Martin, just if he's healthy, and then you get Shane Green coming in, and if he does what he's been doing, he's not going to be your closer or a perfect reliever either. But all of a sudden you look at it and you're like, Snit has 5 or 6 options now he can go to and not have to overuse guys if they're all healthy and functioning.
And Salazar has looked a lot better. He had a good appearance the other day. You can see why they kept him, why they think he has some potential. And you always can add to that bullpen later in the season with some of these, with 1 or 2 with these other starters who you got surplus starters. Just seeing how that once everybody's healthy and all that. It's not as deep as last year's pen, obviously, with Melanson in there. But when you add Green, it's getting a lot closer to it.
It's getting close. I mean, this is pretty damn respectable all of a sudden, and you feel pretty good about it and confident about it.
And if you have a stretch like your starters just gave you where they were going 6 innings or more every night, then your bullpen is fine. That's
probably the key is the starters that's starting to, sometimes that takes a couple of weeks to catch up.
Yeah.
Like when your pen gets beat up, you can have a week or 2 of good starts from your starters, and those guys are still a little worn out down there. But them pitching more consistently and pitching better, it's starting to catch up to where the pen's fresh now, and you're seeing what they can do.
Yeah, I mean, they had an unbelievable stretch where they were going 6 innings, like every time out, 6 or 7. So like Charlie went 5 yesterday through 90-some pitches. It wasn't a good day for him, but it wasn't bad. I mean,
it wasn't terrible. It wasn't great, but when the other guys are doing their jobs, that 5 inning start doesn't hurt you in the pen that bad because guys are fresh and you go 1, 2, 3, 4 like they did. It's when you get like 2 weeks straight of 3 innings and 5 inning starts kind of piling up and only one good one mixed in there, that pen just slowly gets worn down and you start to see that effect. But it works the other way too.
Max is pitching real well now. Looks good. Ian Anderson, he had one bad start Saturday, but I mean, he's looked great for the most part.
Yeah, not worried about him.
Charlie's come around. Charlie's been fine. Yesterday was a little mediocre, but he's been fine. If that's his worst start, 5 innings, 3 runs, they can accept that for sure.
Anytime.
And Smiley's looked a lot better. I think he's still kind of the wild card. We don't know what you're going to get each time out. Gives up too many home runs, but he's looked a lot better. Bryce Wilson, meanwhile, that's your depth still, and he has dominated every time he's gone down to AAA. He's continued to be. I mean, he's on such a run down there in AAA, so you know you can plug him in at any time. You're not going to have Noah back before the end of the year if you get him at all. So you need those other guys to stay healthy. And Soroka, even though Snit came out and said on a live interview on High Heat last week, end of last week, that Soroka was done for the year. Well, they needed the front office and Snit needed to get on the same page with that because Snit walked that back a few hours later in the Zoom and said, I misspoke. I understand he's going to be reevaluated. It's about 10 days from now. But that was the plan all along, that he was going to get reevaluated like 3 or 4 weeks after this cleanup procedure, this second procedure on his Achilles. And for now, officially, that's what they're going with, is they're going to evaluate him again in 10 days. And that there's a chance he could still pitch this year. But I read into that as they're just saying that because they can't tell Soroka you're done for the year. But I'm with you. You said, you didn't want him to push him to come back. I can't see him coming back from a second procedure. Even though it was just a cleanup, it's still, they cut it. They went in.
Yeah.
And
you opened it up.
And he's on a scooter again now, pushing himself around on a scooter with one knee up, to protect the Achilles. That's a long way from the scooter to the mound, since we're 2 months into the season.
And it's not, it's not a cleanup on a little scar tissue in the elbow or knee joint. It's an Achilles. And even when you do your Achilles the first time, everybody's talking, you're probably out a year. So you clean it up, you got to look at least a few months before you're feeling good. Then you got to build all the way up to start, and it's just not worth the risk, honestly. I mean, just give him time. I'm sure he's beyond frustrated, because you're losing 2 years of your career just rehabbing. I mean, that's where guys go crazy. You go to rehab to just lose your mind, and I'm sure he's beyond frustrated. But at this point, it's like, Snit also said we hope we get him back next year, and I don't know if he was what he was saying.
I don't want to read too much into that. I can't imagine why they wouldn't get him back next year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if they go slow on this thing, I think that was just Snit. Probably just bad choice of words.
Yeah, probably, but it scared me.
Yeah, it scared a lot of people. Yeah, it's Soroka, man. I can't even imagine what he's going through being his age. Basically, he's in his peak. He started, he was great early. So you're looking at maybe a 10-year window where he can be one of the best pitchers in baseball, and he's losing 2 of those.
Yeah. The good news is, being a player, he's so damn good that he's going to continue to get tendered a contract. If he wasn't who he is, you'd be looking at getting non-tendered this year.
Sure. Yeah.
But in his shoes, you can at least feel okay and take your time rehabbing and know you got time because he performed so well that you're not going to be just floating on a minor league deal next year trying to prove yourself again. He's going to get every opportunity to come back from this.
And you know what else? I know this is maybe not the time to bring this up, but people should remember this instance when they see young guys taking maybe a little less money in a long-term deal, especially pitchers. How things can change so quickly. And if somebody offers you what you might end up leaving $30-40 million on the table if you're a pitcher and you take a 5-year deal, for
this is
$60 million. This is why you do it.
Yep.
There are no guarantees now that Soroka, we think he's going to come back and be a great pitcher again, but there's no guarantees. And how much easier would it be to go through this rehab
if you had a 6 years, 40? Right.
And they didn't offer it to him because he's so young that I don't think they had even offered it to him yet. I'd be surprised if they did.
Well, if he went to them and asked for 6 years, 30, just saying, I don't know about my health. I got a chance to be set for life. that's why you never criticize, or at least I don't, I do give guys credit that think about the players that are coming after them and they
Right.
hold out for those deals.
Right.
But anytime a guy takes a deal like Ozzy took, we joke about it sometimes.
Yeah.
But if Ozzy had a career-threatening injury tomorrow, he's still set for life.
Yeah.
And
he missed half the season last year.
Yeah. I don't ever judge guys for that, because you got a chance to be secure for life. And, if you miss out on 30 million, you're still sitting on 30.
You're still looking at generational money for you, for your kids, for their kids. People think about that. Ronald Acuna, it might be the most team friendly contract in baseball, because he might be the best player in baseball in another year or two, if he's not now.
Yeah, he might have missed out on 200 or 300.
It's possible.
Yeah.
But he's going to get over $100 million. And
He's
people,
good.
we lose all track of reality when we think about this, like monopoly money. But think about $100 million or whatever the total is with the options.
You can't even spend that fast enough to blow it.
You can't. You put it in the bank, even if you put it in the most conservative investments possible.
Yeah.
Your family, their kids are not ever going to have, if they wanted to, they could use that money if you spend it wisely and you don't blow it. Then, so it's hard. You got to think about that, not just how he could have made 300 million instead of 120 million or, whatever. So, but a pitcher like Soroka, man, if he had the long-term deal, 50 million in the bank, it seems like it'd be a whole lot easier to go through something like this if you knew,
Well, you ask yourself those questions too when you're going through rehab, as if, am I ever going to be the same again? That's probably the hardest battle, is just not having those answers. And you're not getting those answers if it's an Achilles or something like that for a year. You're sitting there doing that rehab, not knowing if it's going to work. It definitely, it would definitely take some of the pressure off. Deep down, you want to compete, you want to be out there, and you want to play. But money, people hate to hear athletes talk about it, but it's a major factor in feeling good about your situation.
Yeah. I don't know. As a pitcher, part of me says that being an Achilles, not being an elbow or a shoulder, is better because it's not his pitching arm. But then another part of me thinks
it's your legs.
Yeah, it's your legs. And there's not as many case studies. There's not as many examples that he can lean on guys that came back, that he can be sure that he can come back. Like if it was Tommy John, he could probably be pretty certain he's going to come back, at least, until you might need another one 8 years down the road or whatever. But with the Achilles, who's he going to point to if that had it at such a young age and had a long career and it never affected them again?
Yeah.
So Wainwright was at the end of his career when he had it as a pitcher. So part of me says, it's better that it's not a pitching arm. And my other part says, but there's not many examples that he can look at and feel comfortable about how they came back from it.
Well, none of that stuff really matters, because everybody else doing well doesn't really help you. Yeah. It's like, that's great. Everybody else did okay. But when I'm looking in my situation and I feel like shit and I can't walk around, you can just go such a dark place during rehab. And I'm just glad he's such a tough dude and so strong mentally. He's a good guy to go through this. I think he can handle it, because some guys go off the deep end, man. And that's a factor in itself, is being able to keep doing the fight and keep rehabbing right. You can really lose your mind, and especially now having a second setback. The places guys go mentally, it's pretty dark.
Yeah, I think it has to help him a lot, being both really intelligent and be really positive and optimistic. Because if he was a negative guy, or if he wasn't a very smart guy, and then he allowed himself to be to start looking at the bad examples, and the negative.
Mm-hmm.
Then I agree. I think he's got a lot going for him mentally to help him get through all this stuff. So it's just a shame, because man, it's been so long now that it's easy to forget some of those nights Soroka had. But we watch Max Fried, how good he is. We watch Charlie have great nights. Soroka on his best night was better than both of them.
He was Cy Young.
Charlie's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
But Charlie, especially like a couple years ago, was pretty damn good. And his stuff's filthy, but Soroka,
it was just dominant. It wasn't like it was 10 pitch innings. It was just overpowering hitters, but pitching to contact, and it was the way he did it, the dominance he showed, and how easy he made it look. That was like, shit, this guy's different. Mm-hmm. It was the ease of it. You watch Max have a dominant start, and it's really convincing. But Soroka was just on another level when he was at his best. And
Yeah.
it's been
Some
so
of those,
long since we've watched it. It's easy to
yeah.
forget. But
Some of those outings Freed had last year were pretty damn
yeah, yeah,
off the charts too.
yeah,
And Ian Anderson's had some off the charts nights
yeah,
too.
yeah.
But yes, that Soroka was so efficient, could go so deep into games, and yeah,
He'd
he's
have
pretty
those
special.
starts where there was never a doubt, like it
Yeah,
never seemed like, things could have got out of hand this inning. It was like just boom, 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 over and over and over for 7, 8 innings in a row.
no traffic, no,
Nothing,
yeah,
just dominant. Just you're not scoring today.
yeah, yeah. Pitcher's pitcher with great stuff,
Mm-hmm.
smart and great stuff. So we'll see. I think worst case scenario, I think he's fine in spring training, but I don't think people should get any hopes up of him pitching this year. And I don't think it's important. I think it's much more important, like you said
Yeah.
before. Now I think you got to think about next year.
Yeah.
Just think, okay, let's not repeat anything that we did about being optimistic about being ahead of schedule or anything like that. Let's just take this as slow as necessary. Because now you got a whole year basically to let him just do everything on the slow end of everything.
Yep.
Make sure you've completely got to, before you go to the next level, make sure you've done everything you need to at this level before you go to the next level. Because I don't think there's any reason to push back to push to get back now, because for what? Pitch the last weeks of the season and hope that he's ready in the postseason. I don't think it's realistic to think that he could be even close to his level of pitching in the postseason if he comes back and makes a few starts at the end of the year.
Well, the only reason,
Better than your other options. You only need 3 starters in the postseason anyway.
yeah, the only reason you is for his peace of mind. That's a reason why you would say,
Right.
all right, we're not bringing you back this year. But if the doctor says, you should be ready to pitch in late October or some point around there, for me, what you do for his peace of mind, so he can go into his off season and just freaking breathe, you have him pitch a couple innings and instructs.
Yeah.
And you have him
say winter ball. Yeah.
Somewhere low pressure where he can just be like, I threw 5 innings or 4 innings or 3 innings, whatever you want him to do. He goes and has his few innings. You say your rehab's complete. You're coming into next season as a normal player. We're putting this behind you. You get to go out, you pitch a few innings, and he gets closure on it, and he gets to feel like he can drop it. And then you get to go have a normal off season, work out, train, do whatever rehab exercises or maintenance exercise you have for this injury. But that would be something mentally for him that you do where he'd feel like he's putting it behind him and he's going to be ready to go next year, instead of having him sit through another entire offseason without that closure on the injury and putting it behind him.
Yeah, I was going to say winter ball, but I think you're right. Instructional league's less pressure. There's no, because his competitive instincts are going to take over if he goes down.
You can roll innings. You just roll the inning, and you say you're throwing 4 15 pitch innings. I don't care what happens. You control the whole thing. You kind of do it without adrenaline, so nothing crazy happens. You don't do any jab steps or anything like that. And it's just, here you go. That was clean. You're done. Go home and decompress. Let it go, because the mental grind is what gets you. So if he can put that behind him mentally, it'd be a big step for him.
And there'd be no buildup in instructional league. No people showing up to see. Like in winter ball, people would be like, "Oh, Mike Soroka's pitching tonight. Let's go out and see this kid." It's like, yeah, I agree. Yeah, you're right. Instructional league would be the way to do it. Go there.
And winter ball can get crazy too with the fans down there. You know what I mean? That'll bring out some adrenaline.
No doubt. All right. Well, anyway, big week for the Braves. I think these next 3 games against the Nationals, they need to keep doing what they did yesterday. They got Steven Strasburg tonight. Fried, what a great matchup. Fried got pushed back. He was going to pitch Sunday. They didn't want to disrupt both of their schedules, so they had Charlie stay on schedule and pitch yesterday, and Fried just bumps back. He's going to be like on a week's rest, and he'll pitch tonight against Strasburg. And this will, if they win this one, I think they got the series and they could go for a sweep and then have some momentum. They once again, they have a chance they'll get to 500 if they win tonight. They still have not gotten over 500. And it's not that they've gotten to 500 4 times, right? They have lost multiple games every time they've got to 500. They haven't just taken one step back. They've lost multiple games, lost 3 or 4 games every time they've got to 500. So they need to avoid that this time, because it happened again last week. They need to get to 500 and then bust through, and they can do that. by winning 2 of these next 3 against the Nationals, or winning all 3
They
of them.
will.
Get 2,
I mean,
you win all 3 of these, you get 2 games over 500 before the Dodgers come to town. And then you got a tough road trip after that to Philly and Miami.
it's a tough month.
This is the toughest part of the schedule so far, easily.
Yeah.
Cardinals will wait after that. So, I mean, yeah, it gets a lot tougher than what they faced lately with the Pirates and the Brewers when they were down. But so
It's kind of good though. It's kind of good they ran into those teams when they weren't at their best. If they can get rolling, they play with anybody.
yeah.
If they were playing like they were, early on and ran into this part of the schedule, it could have got real ugly. So it's good to avoid this part of the schedule early on and do it now when you're starting to get rolling.
Right, because they still haven't hit their stride. I mean, they still have not even come close to hitting on all cylinders.
Not even close.
They did most of last season for the whole time.
Yeah.
It was a 2-month season, but they did most of the time. And they've managed to stay 1 game under 500 right now, playing the way they have with some serious flaws and or struggles. So, you got a lot of guys stepping forward now. You needed to have some guys have career type years, breakthrough years like Austin Riley is having. And then the other guys to do what they're capable of doing normal, like Freddie and Acuna and Ozzy. So once you get those guys all going again with Riley doing what he's doing, and, if you can get Dansby going again the way he was, Contreras has been a big piece.
Yeah.
Because you could add huge fall off with Darno being hurt. And Contreras is hitting better than Darno did when Darno was healthy this year. So
no, he's been great with the bat.
Behind the plate, he's still a little rough, still has some passed balls. But what he's giving you at the plate, I think more than makes up for anything you might. And Charlie said after the game last night, fans, we may look at it as he has these pass balls and he's probably frustrating the hell out of everybody. No, the pitchers love how hard he's trying. Him working with the pitchers, meeting with them, going over guys. He's trying his ass off back there so they can deal with what, the occasional pass ball slash wild pitch, that might get past him because he's trying and he's hitting. And they like him. They like working with him. All the pitchers do. So, yeah.
Well, that's a good sign, though. When you see a dude working his ass off, it's a lot easier to accept, whatever flaw they may have than if they weren't, or if they didn't seem enthusiastic about it or driven. I mean, I'm sure if they're saying that about him, if the pitchers are saying that about him, it's, they're not just making that up. He's probably busting his butt.
Charlie said that he's one of those guys that cares about the craft and cares about the guy that's on the mound, because when Charlie had a bad inning against the Phillies, that really bad one. Charlie said that was the first inning. He came off the mound and you could see it. It was one of his first starts, Contreras' first. And he said Contreras had this look on his face that it hurt him. He said it hurt him. And you see, as a pitcher, when you see that look on a catcher's face, that means a lot to you because he actually cares.
That's the best. And on the flip side, when you have a catcher that you go out, that's like a relief pitcher, you come in a game and it's 8-1 and you give up 3 more.
Yeah.
And you see them just shrug it off like that guy sucks and they go grab their bat.
Right.
There's no worse feeling in the world. But when you see a catcher really care and they're torn up about it. And, I used to see BMAC and Rossi upset after they'd have 3-hit games.
Yeah.
It gives you so much confidence that this guy really cares and he's thinking his way through your inning, regardless of the scenario. I mean, that's a great, I like hearing that about him.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's all the pitchers. I haven't heard one pitcher. And they could kind of no comment it by saying, but they all go out of their way to praise this guy.
Yeah,
they all like
that's
working
cool
with him. So I don't think it's a given that Shea Langoliers is the catcher for the future. I think this guy, if he establishes himself, because this is probably it's a couple years probably for Shea Langoliers gets here. If he hits like this, Langoliers got to show he can hit before he can compete with this guy. And if Langoliers, we know, has great defense.
Yeah.
So
well, you got to get in line though. That's the thing is if he's doing what he's doing at the big league level, you get in line because nobody cares how big a prospect you are when you got a big leaguer getting it done.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, what a backup though you'd have if you had those two in your organization at the same time. But at worst, you're going to have a good trade piece probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, Contreras is he's it was Ozuna himself who said that he thought he could be better than his brother. Well, if you look at what they did at this age, I don't think that's too far fetched. He looks great at the plate. Contreras does. Yeah. I mean, he'll have 2 strikes on him and he'll change his approach. Unlike some of the guys who have 5 more years of experience, he'll change
that single he flipped the other way.
Yes, exactly.
2-run single,
And
flip it the other way.
there's some guys that don't do that at all on this team, and he
Especially
does.
young
He looks,
guys.
hmm yeah.
You know, to see a
So
young guy do that, it's cool to see.
he and Austin Riley have been huge positives so far in this year.
Did you see Austin Riley on MLB Network breaking
Yeah,
down his swing?
yeah, I did.
That was impressive.
I
I,
did.
I he was so in depth with what he was doing at the plate. It gave me a whole new perspective on him as a hitter. You know, I
Because
mean, it all
yeah,
makes sense what he's doing right now.
it can come across. He can come across in interviews as not real cerebral, but
Hmm.
he is, and he showed it in that interview. He knows
Oh
exactly what
man,
he's doing up there. I like to explain it because D-Rose was saying he had never heard somebody talk about getting that space with the elbow, and Austin explained it perfectly. And
yeah,
D-Rose, you could see D-Rose going, huh? Because D-Rose teaches hitting the kids and all that, and you could see D-Rose going, and he's seen a lot. He played, for a decade. He had a lot of different, played with a lot of great players, including Chipper. But you could see Chipper, D-Rose was saying, huh, I'm seeing something that I haven't seen before. This is interesting, though. And he explained exactly why he does his approach. And I agree. It was a good interview. If you compare that to his appearance on ML on High Heat or Central a couple of years ago, night and day how far he's
yeah,
come with the
yeah.
understanding of what he's doing. When he first came up, when he's having that huge month, they had him on there, and he came across as some kid who's just up there hacking.
Just barreling it up.
Yeah,
No,
it's
he
yeah,
went so in depth on his swing and his ability to dissect and diagnose. You know, he's like, if I'm late, if I'm doing
yeah,
this, then I know what this what I always talk about is knowing your keys. And
yeah,
the great players can do that. They can see something go wrong and they know why it happened. And him being able to explain the adjustments he makes based on if he's late to a fastball, you know,
yeah,
he tells himself he's got to stay back or he's got to stay balanced because he said he has a tendency to lunge at the ball a little
yeah,
bit. And he knows he's going to lunge a little bit, but his key is to tell himself not to step at all, not
yeah,
to move at all. And
yeah,
he'll still move, but those are the keys and the feel things that players develop over the years that help them minimize those slumps that I was talking about. So when I saw him breaking all that down in depth and how in depth he was with just understanding his swing and understanding the result and what led to it, I was like, oh, this guy might be really, really good. You know,
you,
it's not like he's just hot right now. He understands
yeah.
why.
You could tell he spent a lot of time with Chipper
Yeah.
when he's talking about those things that you
Yeah.
mentioned right there, because a
Yeah.
lot of the same language that Chipper uses.
Yeah.
But and now Brumley has really helped him. The minor league hitting coordinator has really helped him. He's a guy. He's like his guru. He goes to see in Texas twice each off season. Really helped him. They click. You know, some guys click with other guys, and he clicks with him and with Chipper. So
Those two. You know, those are the conversations that conversation him and DeRosa are having there.
yeah,
Those are the conversations that you can't give value to. You know, you can't analyze when people, nobody likes to give the veteran presence and all that, and
yeah,
you know, nobody likes to give that credit, but those are the conversations
right,
that you have, that those in-depth conversations where guys are trading that info back and forth.
yeah,
Like, think if Dero was still playing and he has that conversation with Riley and
yeah,
he picks up on that key and he rides out a streak, you know, he raises batting average 30 points just from, like, you know, the light bulb
yeah,
going off. Those things, when you get teams that are really close and
yeah,
share that information with each other and go back and forth, those are the teams that, you know, the chemistry really comes into play.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No doubt, man. Guys that hang out in the batting cage, 5 of them in the indoor batting cage together, shooting shit and talking like that.
And have
Hang out
that
after
passion.
the games and at the hot tub
Yeah.
after the game, drinking beers, talking. Yeah. All right. We'll do this again on Friday, probably Thursday or Friday. What's today? Tuesday. So Friday, we'll do this again. We'll be in the middle of the Dodgers. The Dodgers will be arriving that night, actually. So, all right. And hopefully more just baseball talk when we do this again.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right. That's it.
All right.
7:55 is real. We're out.
See you.